Thank you to Brilliant for supporting PBS Digital Studios.
When you hear the phrase, the American dream, what picture comes to mind? For a long time, the classic version included a white picket fence, 2.5 children, and of course, a house.
The importance of homeownership is still embedded in American culture. 7 in 10 adults say they want to own their own home someday, and yet, actual homeownership has dropped to its lowest level since 1967. The biggest culprit, those pesky millennials with an 18% decrease since 2004.
If owning a house is still important, then are young people just being foolish? Or are they reacting rationally to a changing economy?
In theory, owning a home still makes a lot of sense because it kills two financial birds with one stone. It's a place to live and a long-term investment. Every time you make a mortgage payment or the value of your home increases, you're saving money for your future self. It's like a piggy bank you can sleep in. But the world is changing in ways that make this scenario harder to pull off.
Younger people have more debt than previous generations, mainly thanks to student loans. The average amount that a graduate owes has tripled in the last 25 years, which means that many young people already have a house-sized debt cloud hanging over them without even having an asset to sell.
As if that wasn't bad enough, millennials have a larger burden for retirement. In ye olden days, the average American could expect 3 sources of income to support them in their autumn years: a pension, Social Security, and personal retirement savings. But thanks to shifting labor trends and shrinking unions, pensions are quickly becoming a thing of the past, and it's giving this 3-legged stool a major wobble. And since we can't expect Social Security payments to substantially increase anytime soon, younger people will be expected to make up the difference with larger retirement savings, which means less cash on hand to put towards a house.
The shifting labor market has also led to more pressure to be geographically flexible instead of being tied down to one location. And the importance of travel for young people is at an all-time high. In the US, millennials rank travel as more important than home ownership and report that they're more likely to set aside money for that rather than buying a home.
Considering these factors, it's no wonder millennials are viewing home ownership as more of an option than a necessity. So, is it an option that's right for you? Here are some questions to ask yourself.
1. Can I get good mortgage terms? Unless you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around in cash, you're gonna have to borrow the money and pay for the privilege. How much you'll pay in interest is determined by a number of factors, but generally speaking, in order to qualify for terms that make home buying a good investment, you'll need a consistent, provable source of income, a credit score of 760 or higher, and a down payment at or close to 20% of the home price. If you can't meet these requirements, it might not be the right time to buy a home.
2.
So while they recommended having 20% down, I think that is certainly a good goal to have. There are first-time homebuyer loans, things like that allow you to put down much less, like 3, 5, 10%. For example, those might be worth considering. I think some of the key things that I know I saw when I was looking into getting a home was, generally speaking, you want to be able to stay at your home for 5 to 10 years. I think this is primarily because there's a lot of upfront costs with homes, like you have to pay for the agents that are associated with the purchase and sale. Then you also have to pay for inspections, other things. Usually you have to pay upfront for moving, furniture, etc. And then also your mortgage payment itself has interest on it. And so most of the early years, you're just paying interest and not really anything to the principal. So I think by the time you get to 5, 10 years, you've already gone through most of those initial costs, and you're starting to transition into paying the actual principal down. So that's something I would definitely recommend folks to think about, is how long do you think you're going to be there? And it's okay to be slightly aggressive with this, one way or the other. I think I've seen people who say, no, I actually don't plan to be here for 5 years, so I'm not going to stay and make that type of investment. I've seen that by a few people, because I know a number of folks who ended up just staying where they were for 5+ years. And so if they had just kind of committed early on, it might have been beneficial for them. So I'm at least a proponent of buying a home early, but also buying one that's within your means. And so this doesn't mean go buy the biggest house you can afford or the biggest mortgage that they'll allow you to take out. This means sometimes get the smallest place that would maybe be similar to what you're renting. Maybe it's farther away from where your job is. But if you can lock in there for 5, 10 years, I think one of the other benefits is you don't have to worry about like rent hikes. It's not like every year you have to renegotiate or you have like 5-10% increase in your rent. And so that itself pays off year after year, the longer you stay. And if you feel like you have a pretty good job or you're in a good job market, then staying somewhere for 5 years is probably pretty doable. And also, if you make the decision incorrectly, all you have to do is wait around for a few more years. So I would definitely encourage folks to think about sticking around where they are for a while, putting themselves into a good market, and thinking about where their payment is, and maybe trying to find something comparable to what they're currently paying in rent. It might be less luxurious than what you're hoping for, but it can really help you set up financially for the future.
2. Will I have emergency money left over? The money you have wrapped up in your house isn't liquid, meaning you wouldn't be able to get to it easily if you need it. So if your AC breaks down or your car needs repairs and you don't have any emergency funds set aside, the only thing you'll have to cling to is debt, which is more of a lead weight than a life vest. So be sure you have at least 3 times your monthly expenses left over after your down payment.
3. Can I stick around for at least 5 years? Buying a house that you have to sell again quickly probably won't end well. You have to consider upfront costs like realtors and inspections. Plus, at the beginning of your mortgage, most of your monthly payment is going towards interest, meaning your debt isn't actually shrinking that much. For many buyers, it can be a decade or more before that ratio is even 50-50.
So how do these factors shake out in a real world example?
Let's
Run the numbers. This is Ramon. Ramon has a good, steady job. He's been saving money, and he's thinking about buying a house for around $200,000. He only has enough for a 15% down payment and no emergency fund.
Also, there's a chance Ramon might decide to relocate to New York with his girlfriend when she graduates from law school in 3 years. By that time, Ramon will have only paid off around $9,000 of the loan principal. So if the home value increases by an average of 5%, he'll be able to sell it for a bit more than he bought it for, but that's not counting the realtor fees, property taxes, and upkeep.
If everything goes perfectly smoothly, Ramon will just break even. But if just one thing goes wrong, like losing a job for 6 months, or he has to replace his home's roof or AC, it's a different picture. Ramon might want to hold off on buying a house for now.
If you're like Ramon, don't freak out. You could never buy a home, but still be okay financially. There are even some perks, like not being responsible for maintenance costs and being able to easily pack up and move if you get a better job opportunity.
But investing is like
Something that I would also encourage folks to consider if you're thinking about buying a house, I would look at like condos or condominiums, especially like if you're towards a bigger city. Those are probably going to be a lot more readily available than like single family homes. They also have far less maintenance than a standard home would, because like in the case that they gave of if you have an issue with your roof, if it's a single family home, that's 100% your problem. If it's a condominium, then it's actually a problem that you share with a bunch of other people, and you're all paying towards it every single month. So in the ideal scenario, the money you've been putting in for years is actually already sitting there ready for an emergency like this. And in the worst case scenario, what would happen is that they'd probably up everybody's homeowners fees by like $100 a month or something like that, to offset the cost difference from what they had versus how much it costs to actually replace the roof. And then that will usually just kind of balance it out over time. So usually, even if you have a big expense for the building that you're in, it's going to be shared across a number of people. It'll usually be amortized over a certain period of time. And so those things are less likely to ruin you in that case. And also, whether you get a single family home or a condo, you can also rent those out if you do plan to move. That's something that I have considered in the past, of not necessarily for profit purposes, but if you can rent out your home for like a month or a year while you're thinking about moving or you're experimenting with a new location, that person's rent can pay off your mortgage bill. That gets you a little bit more equity, and if it can offset the other costs that you have associated with it, then you didn't really lose anything in that basis. So I would definitely encourage folks thinking about it, but I'm definitely more pro buying a house, but again, being very conservative with the home that you're going to buy. Because I think if you buy too much of a home, this stuff really snowballs, where like if you just are barely able to make the mortgage payment, I think one of the phrases that I've heard that I think works best in this example is, with a mortgage, that's the minimum you're going to pay, and for rent, that's the most you're going to pay. And so that's going to be true. And so if you get a house that the mortgage payment is the literal maximum you can pay in a given month, if anything goes wrong, then you're going to have a huge bill that you're not going to know what to do with. So just be mindful of trying to get a very conservative home as like your starter home. You don't necessarily have to buy the fanciest, nicest home to start with. Just having something to help you kind of get away from apartments will help you build equity and then allow you to maybe sell upwards to a new home that you might like more in the future.
Like exercise. Some workouts deliver better results than others, but anything is better than doing nothing. So if you're not gonna buy a house, it's extra important that you are making investments in other areas, like a 401k or a company that you own.
There's no sugarcoating it. When it comes to home buying, millennials got a tough deal, but you can overcome that disadvantage by understanding your situation and starting to plan for it now.
And that's our 2 cents.
One of our favorite segments of 2 Cents is Run the Numbers. We take a financial concept and put it in the real world with real financial calculations. It's pretty cool to see how small things can become big things over time, from compound interest rates to hidden fees that stack up.
Maybe you want to see how much interest you'll pay over the lifetime of a mortgage, or how much you'd end up with if you quit your gym membership and invested that money instead. With a little hands-on practice, you can master the art of personal finance too.
One fun, easy way to hone your financial math skills is at Brilliant.org. They offer practical, hands-on lessons in math and science. Each lesson puts you in the driver's seat and allows you to run the numbers for your own life.
For more information about Brilliant, head to brilliant.org/2cents.